can now hold 3 or more bits. For this example, we're going to stick with 3 bits. So, in this cell, if we were to have very few electrons on it, it would be 1, 1, 1, while some electrons get designated as 1, 0, 0, and a lot of electrons are 0, 0, 0. There are 8 different levels for all the various amounts of electron charges that our charge trap can be set or written to. The key to the charge trap is that it is specially designed so that after it gets charged with electrons, it can hold onto those electrons for decades, which is how information is saved or written to the solid-state drive. I mean, it's called a charge trap for a reason. It traps electrons or charges for years on end. And in order to read the information, the electron charge level is measured, and the amount of charge on the charge trap is unchanged. However, in order to erase the contents of a memory cell, all the electron charges are forcibly removed from the charge trap, returning it to its lowest level, which is 1, 1, 1, and leaving no excess electron charges behind. Let's move on and explore how these memory cells are organized so that we can store more than 3 bits of information. After we zoom out a little, you can see that the memory cells are stacked vertically. This is where the vertical part in vertical NAND or VNAND comes from. This stack of memory cells, which is technically called a string, is composed of 10 charge trap flash cells layered one on top of another. When information is written to or read from a string, only one cell can be activated at any given time. And to do that, we use separate control gates attached to every layer in the string. It works like this. The bottom control gate first says, "Hey, you, charge trap 1. What's your electron charge level at?" Then the bottom cell sends that information through the center of the string up to the information highway at the top, which is technically called a bit line. Then the next control gate for the second layer asks for the charge level in the second cell, and so on up the string, each cell sending their information up to the highway or bit line. The same kind of sequence happens when charges are being added to a charge trap, which is how information is written to a memory cell. The main thing is that only one layer in the string is either written to or read from at any given time. Let's move on in complexity. Next, we duplicate this string 32 times, and this gets us a page of strings. Let's review some terminology. This is a memory cell, and this is a string. And now here we have a page, and we're going to call this entire page of strings a row. When we duplicate the string, we also duplicate the bit line 32 times. However, rather than duplicate the control gates, we're going to have every cell in the same page share a common control gate. This makes it so that when information is written to or read from a row, an entire page composed of 32 adjacent cells, all in the same layer, are activated at the same time. Let's step up in complexity again. Next, we duplicate these rows 6 times until we get a block. But we're going to do it 12 times so we can see 2 blocks. Okay, so again, here we have a column, here's a row, and this is a layer. And now here's a cell, and here's a string. Next we have a page, and finally we have a block. We're going to connect the tops of each string in a column together, so they all share the same bit line. And our bit line is looking like a highway now. In addition, we have to add a control gate that selects between rows, so that only one row is using the bit line at a time. These are called bit line selectors. As discussed, these bit lines are like highways, and the selectors at the top act as traffic lights that mediate the flow of information so that only a single row can use the highway or is active at a time. Similarly, the control gates attached to each layer act as traffic lights for the layers, with bit line selectors along the tops of each row and control gate selectors along each layer. The solid-state drive can read from or write to a single page at any given time. Additionally, in order to connect to the bit line selectors and control gate selectors, there are wires that drop down from above and run perpendicular to the bit lines. So let's quickly recap. 8 different levels of electrons are placed on charge traps in order to store 3 bits of information. These charge trap flash memory cells are stacked into strings, 10 cells tall, which are duplicated into pages of 32 strings in a row. Next, those pages of strings are duplicated until we have a block 6 rows deep. And here we're showing 2 blocks. Doing some quick multiplication, we find that there are 3,840 memory cells here, capable of storing a total of 11,520 bits. With each pixel in our picture requiring 24 bits, that means that we can store 480 pixels, or this much of our overall picture. That means you need about 25,000 times the size of this layout to store the contents of a single picture. And here's where we learn about the actual size of a memory chip. All the principles we've discussed remain the same, so keep those in mind. It's just that the size is much more extensive than we discussed in our example. It's hard to pin down exact numbers because manufacturers are continually improving their designs, and they're very secretive regarding what their designs look like. But I'll tell you what I know. The latest designs utilize not 10 layers as in the example, but rather somewhere around 96 to 136 layers tall. Here's a single sheet of paper, so you can get a sense of the approximate height of these stacks of memory cells. Now that we understand the height, let's think about the width. A page is around 30,000 to 60,000 adjacent memory cells wide. That means there are 30,000 to 60,000 bit lines in our information superhighway. Blocks are every 4 to 8 rows, and there are around 4,000 to 6,000 blocks. Along the edges are the control gate selectors and the bit line selectors on the other side. Together they comprise what is called a row decoder. And by using both sets of selectors as traffic lights, we're able to access a single page. as how touchscreens work, how PCBs work, or how cameras in your smartphone work. If you have any questions or want us to add more branches relating to solid-state drives, tell us in the comments below. But for now, thanks for watching. Subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when we post more branch episodes on how solid-state drives work and other topics. If you learned something new, share this video with others. Tweet it, post it to your favorite discussion, or share it on social media so others can learn how this amazing technology works. Until next time, consider the conceptual simplicity, yet structural complexity in the world around you. Your smartphone has a variety of components that can do dozens of different things, and the brain at the center of all these components and functions is the system on a chip, or SoC for short. When you watch a video such as this one, phone a friend across the country, or navigate through a city using GPS, it may seem like magic or alien tech, but in reality, these feats of technology are all performed inside this SoC, which is designed and manufactured through the hard work of countless scientists and engineers. In this episode, we're going to explore each section of its SoC and then piece together the processes this system on a chip goes through when you do something as routine as snap a photo and post it online. These chips are unfathomably complex, as there are between 5 and 10 billion transistors that make up the SoC, and they all need to fit into an area the size of a penny. This is a complex topic, and there are many avenues that we could explore. But in order not to overload your brain with details, we decided to focus on the following aspects. First, we'll start with a few notes and caveats, and then we'll dive into the layout and key sections of the system on a chip. Next, we'll explore how data flows through the SoC, using the example of what happens when you take a picture. Then, we'll look at some of the complexity inside the central processing unit, or CPU block of the SoC. And stick around until the end, where we'll discuss how scientists and engineers design and manufacture these microchips, and we'll explore what a nanoscopic view of the SoC would actually look like compared to this visualization. So, for this video, grab a snack, sit down, and maybe take some notes if you feel like it, because this is going to be one very thorough and incredibly detailed video. To start, this video is sponsored by Gerber Labs, a quick, reliable, and user-friendly provider of printed circuit boards. Next, this microchip is actually composed of two key parts. On top is the DRAM, or the Dynamic Random Access Memory, which is the working memory of your smartphone, and on the bottom is the SoC, the brains of your smartphone. FYI, the long-term memory, where all your music, apps, files, and the operating system are saved, is over here in the flash storage. We have a separate episode on that microchip, and you can find it here. But in this episode, we're going to focus on the SoC. This setup is called a package-on-package microchip, or POP. Technically, this is the microchip, and the separate layers of the DRAM and SoC are each called a die. However, the word chip has evolved to mean a variety of things. So, while all of these rectangular components are microchips or chips, both the DRAM and system on a chip are also called chips, even though they're just half of the overall package-on-package microchip. Moving on, we may make comparisons or analogies between smartphones and humans. For example, we call the SoC the brain, or the camera can be considered similar to a